Okay, I'm going to do a quick screencast for the reading the first colonies, reading number one. And I will also probably reference this particular test sample series of questions, just to give you an idea of some of the questions that I asked. So let's go to the PowerPoint slideshow here. All right. So we have these terms that the expectation is you have an understanding of these terms. Next class, we will go a little more into detail about them. So for now, if you want to try to just start reading, memorizing, and maybe seeing how these terms can be used in questions here. For example, this one, number one, Shaquan has a vagina while Muhammad has a penis. I would say the answer here is B, sex biological, because it's looking at a biological difference. Women wear a dress to identify in a social way their biological differences. So women are wearing a dress. That seems to be a norm, that there is this belief about how the group should behave. A social construct is like a big label: gender, homosexuality, race, teenagers. There might be some confusion about these two here. I do want to point out that gender is a social construct. And so when we're looking at norms, let's take a look at number three. After being called a slut, Emma assumes the role and begins showing more skin by hiking up her dress above the knee and wearing revealing shirts. So if we take the term slut, that right there could be a social construct. It is a big label, and there are certain, patterns of behavior, and that is where you start to see the establishment of a norm. So this one here is looking at a couple of things here. In this scenario, she's being called the slut. I am not asking about slut. I'm more concerned about Emma's behavior and how she is now starting to buy into that idea, and that she's starting to engage in behaviors that are known about how such people act, which is number four. If society accepts the term slut as a reality descriptor, then slut is a social construct. So just keep in mind, gender is a social construct, and there are certain, you know, um, expectations, behaviors about how the genders are supposed to act, which creates a norm. So let's think about it like that. Also, keep in mind some of the questions that were addressed in the discussion today, as well as in the slideshow, the reading, the type of woman attracted to indentured servitude, and then the scenario about getting out of one's labor. So let's go to present here. Jamestown and Roanoke, these are the first, colonies. Who's coming? We've already established that it's poor working class women, not married, that are coming here. The indentured servants are people who are hired by contract to come to the New World for a, decided time of work, and in exchange, the person will pay for their labor, and their labor could involve, clearing this particular forest. Line 41 talks about in the New World, this New World, things are dangerous, food is scarce, and things are definitely not safe. As a result of these conditions, for the first time, they are considering giving women the authority to own land, which is coming here. So when we see the steps in this class, I'm always looking at the steps as when society needs women, they're willing to give women more rights. But once society no longer needs whatever women are providing, they want to now return women back to their current place. So if we go back to like World War One, we are led to believe that women were given more work opportunities. They made the weapons and things like that. After the war, those jobs go back to males. We talked about the difference between a doll and a drudge. And drudgery is usually associated with difficult menial work. And now is where we start to look at beauty, class, trying to influence how women are expected to behave, which could bring us back to this particular slide here. We looked at purity and indentured servitude. And why did we do that? Well, because the reading looked at lines 71 to 72, how women were trying to get out of their contractual obligation by having children. Now, notice here that their service, meaning the female in question, was extended to repay their master for labor. So, in this scenario here, if there is a 5-year contract, and one of those years, Janet, the indentured servant in question here, is pregnant. The question is whether or not her pregnancy counts as labor. When we look at the reading, it says that the mother was still under indenture by the time the baby was weaned. Her child was bound out as a servant, even though still a toddler. And it looks at how they have to repay the labor lost to the master. So if I have a 5-year contractual obligation, and 2 of those 5 years I'm pregnant, bearing the master's child, they don't just look at those 2 years and say, you're good. They count that against the woman. So now the 5-year contract counts for 7 because 2 of those 5 years she was actually pregnant. And that is lost labor. Notice how they're making a decision about the worth of child rearing. The legislature also reasons that servants who are impregnated by their employers cannot be allowed to go free because it induced such loose persons to lay all their bastards to their masters. Here they're painting all women, these indentured servants, with a broad brush, and they're trying to say that women are going to sign contracts and they are going to seduce their masters as a way to get out of their contractual obligation. That's what's going on in this particular piece here. And that's pretty much it for reading number 1. So you definitely want to focus on those points, these terms, which we will address at a later class, the indentured servant, but not really the indentured servant like as a definition. Focus more on the indentured servitude in connection to this particular line.